All right, we are good to go. Okay, we're good.
Who's cheering? Sylvia, are you cheering?
I didn't think I was supposed to, but if you want me to, I'll jump right on in.
Welcome to the Green Committee meeting of the Allegheny County Sanitary Authority Board of Directors.
Today is March the 19th.
Would you please? Thank you.
Today is March 19th. We have, first we will begin with roll call. Ms. Prater.
Emily Kincaid. Paul Klein. Dr. Shana Tharp-Gilliam. Darren Kelly.
Here.
Sylvia Wilson.
Here.
That is the end of the roll call.
That's the end of the roll call. All righty. We have two informational items today. The first is the GROW final report update, which is wonderful, and then a GROW agreement. I will toss it back to Ms. Williams right now.
And I will pitch it to Mr. Prevost, Tim, Manager of Wet Weather Programs. Take it away, sir.
We're going to talk quickly on the two information items. GROW final report update. At the January board meeting, I gave a presentation where we had 91 final reports. We did receive a more recent one that has been analyzed, and I'm very proud to report to the board that the GROW program has now surpassed 1 billion gallons of stormwater reduction per year, based on our analysis of the final reports that have been submitted. So that one extra put us over the top. So we have 92 reports that we received. I'll talk a little bit more about final reports later in the meeting, but and 91 were included in the last, were referenced in our last summary report. For final reports, I want to remind the board that ALCOSAN conducts a review of every final report. It is all documented, and we document the costs, the scope, we perform a monitoring review, and we also provide our notes in these summary reports. This was last year at this time where we gave this this update on the final reports. You can see projects that we've assessed, categorized in overperforming, plus or minus 25% of what we originally estimated, and the projects that were underperforming based on what we anticipated. In that year, we have increased our overperforming projects, which is good. This is the post-construction typical year volume. These are our estimates of what we have removed from the system versus what we had assessed in our analysis. So overperforming is going up, and this is definitely going to be due to the increased monitoring expectations that we've shared with our municipalities, which I will go into a little bit more detail later in the committee meeting. Overview of the GROW agreement. This is something that I apologize to the community members. It's a little dry, but it is something that the board does review and approve every year. So I will quickly go through just to give you a taste of what the GROW agreement is about and the highlights of a GROW agreement. And I promise all committee members, I will not take very long. The GROW agreement is a legal document. It's 16 pages long, 31 paragraphs. All the language Max tells me is legally important, but most of it is also boilerplate. Come on, Max, it's all legally important. Some of the language has fundamental interests to ALCOSAN, customer municipalities, and the GROW program. And in the agreement, there are 4 exhibits. The beginning of the GROW agreement has not changed since cycle 1. Its recitals, mutual cooperation, amount of the agreement, and the effective dates. Very straightforward, typical agreement language. We talk about the grantee's responsibilities. Keynotes in here, the property interests that we have, ALCOSAN getting access to the project, what the grantee's financial responsibilities are, but this is also the place where we make sure that they understand there is a 20-year O&M obligation. As Karen points out, that is the reason why we can have a GROW program, is this obligation. Payment provisions and financial responsibilities. This is telling the grantee how we will pay them back. It also identifies what the financial responsibilities fall under the customer municipality. If a project goes over budget, the grantee is responsible for those over budgets. It's not on ALCOSAN. Conditions of repayment of grant funds. This talks about where the grantee may need to pay ALCOSAN back. This would be in the case if they fail to maintain the project in their 20-year O&M obligation, but also in the instance where if the municipality sells their asset to an entity that is not eligible for GROW. Ownership, operation, and maintenance of the project. If the grantee doesn't do their O&M, ALCOSAN has the right but not the obligation to do this O&M for them. And then we have the right to go and seek reimbursement from the grantee. This section also identifies property interest requirements, and it also lets the grantee know that if they deviate substantially from what they provided to us in their application, that ALCOSAN can rescind the GROW award. Many other sections that have not substantially changed since cycle 1. These are pretty straightforward. Every 4 months, we expect a progress report from projects that are still in construction, but have not yet submitted a final report. And this is the level of documentation that we expect from every project. Acknowledgement of ALCOSAN assistance. This is where there's an expectation that the municipality lets their ratepayers know that ALCOSAN is helping fund a project in their town. And they also, this also talks about sign. Many more straightforward agreement sections that for the most part have not changed over many cycles. And then the newest section from last year that the board agreed to is the transfer of ownership, which identifies if a project is part of a regionalization asset transfer, that those obligations will be assigned to ALCOSAN. That's it for agreements. I'd be more than happy to take any questions on the agreements. Okay.
I don't have any.
No questions here.
Yeah. Nope. Thank you. You always do such a good job of explaining everything and sharing with us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is an action item for GROW end date modifications. Every so often we have projects that are coming to their end date. There are 18 identified on this in this cycle. 18 requests have come in saying that they need a little bit more time. The projects that are highlighted in yellow, there are 12 of them. they're really close to submitting their final reports, but they will not be done by the end of March. So they submitted the requests just so they could get that little bit of extra time. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the committee meeting, we should be expecting these 12 final reports probably within the next month or two. They have finished their monitoring, and they just need to get these final reports wrapped up. So we will have a lot of reviewing to do in the next month or two. Since this is an action item,
Motion to recommend modification.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
All righty.
And
Moving
the last action item, program guidelines. As I mentioned with the agreement, this is important because this is something that the board will be voting on in March. So the process, we learn from every cycle, and if modifications are necessary, we work out the modifications, we present them internally. Once internally we're in good shape, we send it to Max. Max takes a look at it, and if he has any comments or questions, we address them. We're at the point now where we're at the fourth place where we present this to the Green Committee. And I'm going to go through these changes with you so that the committee can make an informed motion. Two types of modifications: recurring modifications, which we will not need to talk about, but then program modifications, which are adjustments intended to improve the program or the understanding of the program to the applicant. There are 5 main sections that we're going to be talking about: eligible use of funds, ownership and operations of the source controls, monitoring data, minimum design criteria, and minimum project value. These are all substantial program modifications. Eligible use of funds. This section always talks about what is eligible and what is not eligible for reimbursement. What we needed to do in this cycle is make sure that certain items are clearly defined as not eligible. And these are pre-construction CCTV, heavy cleaning, items that are considered routine maintenance that is not something that we would rebate or reimburse a municipality. But also in the change, there is language that discusses when something that we may say initially is ineligible does become eligible. And these are things that they're calling allowance items. And sometimes the allowance items are things that are necessary to get the project done, or to construct the project, but they're not able to identify it clearly in the application. So that is language that has been added into the program guidelines. The next part, ownership and operation of source controls. This is where the applicant, their responsibilities are laid out. They're responsible for the installation and long-term operation of it. Their O&M requirements are 20 years. What we needed to do in this cycle, though, was to align the program guidelines with the GROW agreement. The agreement identified instances where the municipality must repay ALCOSAN, but it was not in the program guidelines. What we're just doing is making sure that the two are aligned. And so if the municipality sells their sewer system to a non-GROW eligible entity, that funding would have to come back to ALCOSAN. And it also confirms that if the asset was transferred to ALCOSAN through the regionalization process, that 20-year O&M obligation will then revert also to ALCOSAN. Once again, this is just making sure that the program guidelines are clearly lined up with our agreement. Next part deals with monitoring data. And a little background, the monitoring data is referencing comments back from the regulatory agencies. Monitoring is crucial in this program, it is unique. We prove what the investment is getting us. As I mentioned, 2023, our regulatory agencies provided us feedback on source control projects that we do an annual report on. And these comments were related to what we called reliable data. And they offered us very helpful suggestions, which we incorporated into last year's report. But now we want to be sure that it is very clear to our applicants what that language is. There are three parts to this. The first part is identifying a minimum duration of monitoring expected from a GROW project. And this is pretty straightforward, at least a month of data. If you're seeking reimbursement for a project that you've already built, give us 2 months of data. It also clarifies that if the data is not sufficient, the applicant will not receive an award. In part two, it goes into a little bit more detail about the expectation that we have for monitoring data. This is the expectation where we want to be. It's not where they have to be, but that's where we want this project to be, so we can say that the data is highly reliable. And the third part is just a reminder that there are things that the applicant should do in their monitoring that ensures that the data is going to be reliable, and it's a good, and also identifies the reference for them that they can call on from ALCOSAN's website, ALCOSAN's Green Stormwater Infrastructure and Source Control Monitoring Guide. It's a mouthful. That was monitoring data. Coming close to the end, minimum design criteria. This is, there's a break. All projects need to have a certain level of design level. This was something that we brought into the GROW program, I believe in cycle 4. We're now talking about cycle 9. 60% design and 90% design, and there's a line based on the value of the project. What we had to do last year was take a look at the construction costs for the Pittsburgh region. Inflation needed to be accounted for the past few years. And we took a look at engineer news records, information from 4 years ago to now when we first started this. And the increase was over 19%, not quite 20. So we were recommending that this increased 20%, so that the line now moves from $1 million to $1.2 million. This will make some folks pretty happy because, you know, getting to a 90% design criteria is basically saying they almost have to be done with designing the project. Last is the same idea. We have a minimum project value of $100,000 to be considered for GROW grant funding. And that is including the cost for design and construction. Again, based on the price increases for construction in the Pittsburgh region, we're recommending that price goes up from $100,000 to $120,000. And the genesis of this was some projects that did not have a lot of value, but got a small match. They were spending most of their grant money administering the grant. And so what we wanted to do was try to ensure that if you're going to do this, that you're going to get enough money to make it worth the municipality's while to implement this project. Now, there's variances that we can have in this. We know if there's going to be a highly effective project that may not reach this threshold, we can provide a variance. And we've done enough of these projects where we start to understand what projects have a high probability of success and ones that may not have that high of a probability. Thank you for listening to all of that. Again, this is another action item.
Okay,
Motion
All
to
right.
recommend the modifications.
and I'll second it, and we will now vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. We
Thank
will be
you.
recommending both of these items to the full board. And according to the agenda, I don't see any other business. We don't have any determined future meeting dates. So unless, Ms. Williams, you have anything, then we are adjourned.
No, ma'am. We appreciate your
Okay.
participation, committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Motion
see
to
ya.
adjourn. Right.
Yeah,